Of the conquering lion, most lighter, you're the only one we can rely on. Hail of the conquering lion, most lighter, you're the only one we can rely on. In a pretty in a jam,
All right, so no scripts here, just completely off the top of the dome, off the cuff, as far as what we intended to get to for this evening on the outset of coming forward here to the microphone. So as ones, of course, had heard, myself just running through a lot of the information, probably what you will be hearing for the next couple of days or so, depending on how a lot of the mass media and a lot of the other news platforms will frame this. But from what we are seeing here, this is exactly what happens when you have a leadership and an administration in place that tends to take a people, a nation, and its country in a direction that the rest of the constituency, the rest of that nation's population doesn't want to go in. So that it kind of just sticks out in our mind the most from what we are seeing here. And again, as we mentioned before, just to tie this in again to Ras Tafari, as of course this is a Ras Tafari platform. We say that unapologetically. And again, if one's actually check our theme here, our main theme here is to take Ras Tafari into the next millennium. So, just keeping that on the framework as our base from now on. And again, we'll be mentioning that a lot more often as more so our mission statement here on Ras Tafari on the Brink with this podcast and this personal, I guess you can say, opinion piece, this opinion platform that I myself have indulged myself on and actually will look forward to add other ones if they, so choose to bring about, any more ideas that we could actually utilize to, again, build upon this platform and move it along forward and share with many more ones in due time. But, again, just sticking to the topic, dealing with Ras Tafari in this sense, these are things that ones have to really take into consideration and think about, on many levels as far as reconstructing or even so keeping, in a sense, the strands of strength to the imperial crown, the imperial Ethiopian monarchy, so on and so forth. These are things which, ones and ones, have probably overlooked for quite some time amongst many a Rastafari on an international level. And maybe in so that, has come along with Rastafari becoming such a great and wide movement, something that has been acknowledged by many ones across many walks of life, many backgrounds, many ethnicities, nationalities, so on and so forth. All of that kind of comes with the territory, but at the same time, there is such a need for revitalizing the core of what even started the movement in the first place. And this is what really allows any movement to continue beyond its expiration date, so to speak, quote unquote, as we mentioned that. But again, looking at this particular situation with Paris and Notre Dame and the president and the Yellow Vest protests there in Paris, France, so much really again comes to mind. And I think that the striking irony in this entire storyline is the fact that even though you have had such or at least as the reports had mentioned, a 22-week-long protest of your own population, your own citizenry there in France, even in the one of the main cities there in France, as there are many other tourist attractions, many other large cities and very attractive cities that ones tend to visit, year in, year out. Paris definitely takes the cake as one of the more important cities in the country of France, bar none. And again, with so many other tourist attractions like the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre Museum, Saint-Chapelle, the Arc de Triomphe, these are probably names that certain ones don't know about, but if they have ever visited Paris, they've ever visited France, they ever even, thought about visiting Paris or visiting France. These are names of places that, ones probably are fairly familiar with. And they're very, very busy places. They're very internationally known tourist attractions. And as we mentioned before, even with just Notre Dame itself, it brings in quite a bit of revenue and attracts quite a bit of attention, not only for it being such a historical landmark, but also a religious stronghold there within the country for centuries now. As, of course, we were able to gather with much of the information before actually coming here to, I guess you could say a bit of our little rant, or even so our, reasonment as far as what we were bringing forward, just tying in a lot of this storyline to Ras Tafari and kind of dovetailing off of our tripartite series with Ras Tafari still has to be organized and centralized. We put in, a bit more of the thoughts and the opinions and certain topical themes and subject matters which we had sought to bring about here, in with a lot of, again, this irony of what we have been seeing with this 22-week-long protest of the quote-unquote Yellow Vest movement. And again, we mentioned that, these yellow vests that many of these protesters here of the French population are wearing in protest of their government, of their establishment at this very point, are, kind of, I guess you can say a uniform in a sense, not only for the protesters, but the uniforms of skilled tradesmen. These are the uniforms of, ones that usually work in very high risk, high stress industries in which, they are very needed in any community. And even though, clearly, again, this very strange irony that these protesters are wearing these specific yellow vests or these specific garments of clothing, and these are usually the garments that will be worn for people who would actually be needed to restore Notre Dame to its prominent edifice. So that even strikes an even larger irony within the entirety of this story. So, you have this movement that has been going on at least for the past 4 to 5 months or so, nearly half a year. And with, so much of what the French president has been, doing from a local to an international scale seemingly is coming to a head. And he was set to address his entire nation, or at least this movement, and a lot of the policies that seemingly have come about and been enacted there in the country today, and all of a sudden Notre Dame goes up in flames because of certain renovation issues. So, we just found that, again, extremely ironic. And even so, with the Yellow Vest protests going on well into its 22nd week, all of this, just seems to be very opportune and, even so, even in a sense, calculated. Whether we are not even so making a lot of these accusations, but again, everything seems, quite fishy around this entire subject matter, and how certain initiatives are even being put forward before there's even a clear consensus on what to actually do aside from rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral is set. There are all of these initiatives being ready to be pushed out as far as fundraising, so on and so forth with that matter. So that kind of plays into a lot of the policy and administrative positions that have been taken there in the country of France. So all of this, really playing in such a manner, just we continue to say so ironically, but, even so very peculiarly in that sense as well. But here's so with what we really sought to get into within this particular segment was, again, making sure that Ras Tafari kind of pay attention to this story and not just let it gloss over, as far as especially with it being the Roman Catholic Church and it being France, and of course France's historical record, especially with human rights, so on and so forth, colonialism, all of these things kind of playing into place. And I just would not like for Ras Tafari to completely shrug this story off as just another one-off as far as Europe goes. And even so, with all of the information that we have been sharing on many platforms, as well as this one here, sharing a lot of the communicative breakdowns as far as the nations or the population there in Europe, and a lot of the administrative, I guess you could say, establishments in that sense, or the administrations that have been put into place, or elected officials that have been put into place, however ones actually may see it from their own perspective, especially there in Europe, as we, of course, do not live there, but we, of course, observe many things and kind of calculate and make our own, or at least draw our own conclusions from what we are able to gather as far as information is concerned. But we see quite a bit of these themes playing out on certain levels there in Europe, and make our own possible educated guesses as far as how things may play out in the future. But even so, with again, sticking to Ras Tafari in this sense, and what we were mentioning about one's making sure that they don't just shrug this story off as just another one-off or something just to be spoken about there in the mass media. It should be examined a little bit more in depth as far as we are concerned. Mainly because these are themes that have been missing for, or at least in a sense, within the Rastafari community on an international level. And that is dealing, of course, with many of the high stress and high risk, I guess you could say, activities and industries. There's a lot to be said about what has happened, especially here in America, as that is where we find ourselves, especially among the Rastafari of the Caribbean and other places as well, here on these shores, and seeing, especially with this opioid crisis coming up. But what ones didn't really notice or even pay a lot more attention to is that this quote-unquote opioid epidemic or opioid crisis didn't really come into effect until a lot of the labor unions either were dismantled, or whether that be from the administrative or the organizational structures, or in a sense just dismantled all on their own, maybe because of funding or possible structural issues, so on and so forth. But what we seem to have found out in that sense, in a stream of events, the breakdown of American manufacturing comes first. A lot of the policies that were enacted bring about that instance, which we have spoken on quite extensively on this platform and many others as well. And if we haven't spoken about that, we should speak about that again. The breakdown of American manufacturing, and how that played a huge part here on these shores, in which many ones have not only gone out of business, or in a sense come to a halt, where they are finding it hard to find specific occupational work, or a job, as they would say here in these days and age. And a lot of that really comes into a heavy role in day-to-day life. And again, all of these things kind of, were a hailstorm which led up into what we know today as the opioid epidemic, or the opioid crisis, which is claimed, to the last time we did a report on it, somewhere to the tune of 70 to 75,000 lives here on these shores in the United States of America. So all of that kind of plays in a hailstorm as to what, in a cosmological fashion, is going on there in Europe, in particular the country of France, so to speak. So I would, again, encourage many Rastafari, especially those listening to us or will hear this in the forward, to check into as far as this issue is concerned, because this is, a lot bigger than just the, Roman Catholic Cathedral of Notre Dame. This is about, the entirety and the survival of a people, and we are going to see exactly how they are going to react at this very moment, dealing with their administration that clearly has been a bit antagonistic to a lot of their needs, or a lot of their wants, or a lot of the proposals which they have sought to bring forward. So a lot of this, plays into, the entirety of the situation of what we are hearing going on there in France. And again, this is, a time where hopefully, many Rastafari, especially those who will be listening to this message, will start to pick up a lot of those former skills which Rastafari had been known for quite some time, especially during the time of the 60s on up to what we can say at least was the early 90s. And we see a lot of Rastafari, again, picking up a lot of these skills, tradesmen, occupational working skills again, especially carpenter, many ones going into construction again, many ones getting into commercial driving, with a lot of the CDL certifications, many ones even so learning how to become many worksmen and a lot of different and uh, uh, various organizational skills, not just, again, relying so much on what they know today as a college education for their particular, I guess you could say, the mode of feeding oneself or sustaining oneself as far as upkeeping of a household or home economics in that sense. But they are definitely looking to many of the older, or at least many of the recently older avenues of occupational work to find a lot of sustainability within their lives and hopefully those around them as well. And having these organizational skills and a lot of these technical skills, to be more specific, will ensure that not only ones do have occupational work that, will seldom go away, and they, of course, will have a service, a potential business that they can start for themselves and even so hire many other people as well and keep them in a sense of earning a living, as they say, quote unquote, for quite some time to come. But they come up with these skills, they practice and hone them until the point that they are able to sustain themselves either with or without steady income, depending on how they intend to live their lives, whether that be in the big city or whether that be on the countryside. So all of this plays a heavy role into what we know as Rastafari, because these are heavily needed skills that can contribute to quite a society if organized in an orderly fashion. And even so, having a lot of these skills, again, these were things that were going on, especially in Imperial Ethiopia, if ones don't know, for quite some time, even though, it seemingly is an interregnum period or an extended interregnum period as far as we're concerned, that has taken place now over the past 40 to 50 years or so at this very moment. But even so, especially amongst the Beta Israel, it was found that when many of the Ethiopian Jews had immigrated to the state of Israel as we know it today, they were very versed in many stone cutting, many jewelry working, skilled craftsmen, skilled tradesmen, honed activities, which led up to a lot of the opportunities for them to sustain themselves there in the state of Israel, and also with the administration there, given the opportunity, or at least they honed and sought the opportunity to exploit a lot of these skills and activities that were honed over thousands of years amongst the Beta Israel and many other Jewish, quote unquote, or Hebraic communities that came to immigrate or emigrate to the state of Israel at that time. So a lot of these skills, are not, far-fetched ideas. They are not, just one-offs. They're not just, some shot in the dark idea that certain ones may have come up with, off the cuff. These were things that were promoted. These were things that were passed down. These were things that were, became a part of the traditional culture of many of these peoples, especially amongst those which we tend to pay a lot more attention to as far as Rastafari is concerned. And again, playing a huge and heavy role within the entirety of the situation of, sustaining a society again. So, as always, we won't rant too much and hold the too long here listening to much of our rant and our rave as far as what we are seeing and what we'll probably be hearing about for the next couple of days or so. Give or take, a few hours or so, depending on, what side of the world you're on. But again, Notre Dame Cathedral, long-standing landmark and Roman Catholic Cathedral, huge tourist attraction, up in flames just a few short hours ago. And even so, right before the French President Emmanuel Macron was to give an address on a long-standing protest within the country, especially within the city of Paris, France, dealing with this anti-governmental, anti-establishment movement, so to speak. So very ironic that these themes come up at this very time. But indeed, we will keep our eyes open and our ears to the ground for more information to come, so much more to share as we move along throughout this Shabua. And again, entered into this Lenten season for the sixth week, actually coming up into our own Passover time, Fasika on its way, and many other celebrations as well. And of course, with what we mentioned before here on the outset, our Hebrew 101, our Learn Hebrew series has begun there on our YouTube channel. Just visit Lidj Yefdi, Lidjyefdi, there on YouTube. That's Lidjyefdi there on YouTube. And of course, be sure to visit our other sister sites as well, RastafariGroundation.org, as well as our e-commerce site, gashanator.onuniverse.com. A lot more products to be added. We're still actually in the beta testing section, or at least the conceptualization phase of making sure that we dot all our I's and cross all our T's as far as our e-commerce site is concerned. Getting a lot more of our affiliations tightened up on many instances, and also, creating our own products in the process. Even so, acquired another potential contract. We're actually in some consolidations as far as bringing forward some new products to the table, completely created from our own hands, but in a sense also utilizing a lot of the materials for manufacturing from other ones that we will outsource that particular notion to. But ever so glad, ever so thankful, even so, for the opportunity. And hopefully we'll be able to dispel a lot of the hardships that come with, doing such things as well, so that other ones can, get to the point of building up their own products as well. And we certainly will be excited to see what ones will create. So as always, just give thanks again for even listening to us here for this short bit of a rant and rave on much of the information that has been going on out there, many of the developments, which ones we'll hear over probably the next 24 to 48 hours or so. But as always, stay blessed and peace within the heart, home in the mind, as we used to say many times there on Discipleship Radio. But a big shout out, of course, to our Ras Tafari Groundation family, the Line of Judah Society Incorporated family, and much more to be shared here on Rastafari on the Brink. I am indeed your host and your brethren, Lidj Yefdi, Yefdeyah, Johannes Welda, Manuel, RastafariRenaissance.com. Be sure to stay tuned for much more here, and hopefully you will keep your eyes open as well to a lot of the events that are taking place in and around you. Make sure that you stay on the lookout for you and yours, and I pray that Jah will bless and keep you as you move forward.
CSI. Yo. Knick-knack, paddywhack, Hebrew cows back. When I grab the microphone, we can see get brat. You shine, I'ma dim that. Spitting all that weak rap. My words is like a big gat. I'm working with the kickback. Aiming where you lit at. Warlord, swing a heavy sword. Take heads off in the name of our Lord. It's a massacre in the name of all that's holy. I promise this Babylon system can't contain or hold me. Burn fire. In the face of all them liars, if you the most high, Ras Tafari the most higher, check your doctrine. I blaze the Aisha and enter in, kneel before the altar and confess each and every sin. Turn toward Jah and repent from your evil ways. Separate from heathen living in these very last days. Plagues and famine, crooked cops committing murder. It's GMOs in your McDonald's hamburger. What you doing? The temple become ruined, and the glory that you're pursuing will eventually do you, and that's fact. And there ain't no coming back. Liberty off track. Pick it up, put it back. You can do it. Yeshua already proved to keep Jah in your heart, and you will get through it. Mountains moving, seas parting, clear the way. The line of the tribe of Judah shall break every chain. Hail the King. House Selassie, I and I, Lord and Savior, needless to guess, Ras Tafari, provide the righteous teachings for the whole church body. Yeah.